A city like this has never existed before, and probably never will again. This is the Kowloon walled city. It was lawless, filthy, unsafe, and overcrowded, making it one of the worst cities on Earth. But despite the danger and decay, it has a strange beauty that's hard to explain. Why is a city born from chaos so captivating? To find out, I'm gonna build it in Minecraft. To get the size and location of the buildings accurate, I made a 3D model of it first, which I could then bring into Minecraft as a starting point. The city began as a Qing military outpost, but when treaties left it in a legal gray zone, it grew rapidly without oversight, becoming this dense, complicated maze. As I pieced this together, I began to understand why there weren't many successful builds of this place. Every building and alleyway is completely unique, with every part of it fitting together unpredictably. I realized how difficult it was going to be to capture the city's raw and lively complexity in Minecraft without it feeling too formulaic. I also quickly modeled the site topography and brought that into Minecraft first so that the buildings would have a base to sit on. And when I did this, I was really surprised at how steep the slope was on the site, because it's not something that reads very well in images. In Minecraft, this might not seem like much, but in real life, this is about 45 feet or 14 meters of slope across the site, which is roughly the height of a 3-story building. And so that's pretty substantial and only adds to the complexity of the city. Then I finally started bringing in the buildings one group at a time, and I was already blown away by how dense this place was. Every time I thought I was finished with an area, there were always more buildings to load in. The walled city had an estimated population of roughly 33,000 people living in a city the size of 4 American football fields. For comparison, imagine Islington, the densest part of London, but 80 times denser. And that's when I realized that this city was at its absolute maximum in every way. It would have been impossible to fit more people or more buildings into the boundary. The building heights were capped by airspace restrictions, and the only spaces between the buildings were what was absolutely essential for maneuvering around. The only exception was a collection of smaller buildings in a courtyard in the very middle of the city. This was originally the magistrate's office, called a yamen, along with a few small temples. These courtyard buildings later served as spaces for community gatherings, classrooms, and social events. Once I had the building massings in place, I changed all the materials to more realistic colors. At this point, I really wanted to start building the unique facades, but I decided that it was more important to build some of the internal aspects first, while the buildings were still in this simple block phase. While I didn't plan on completing every single interior room of the city, I did think it was important to try to make the city explorable with floors and stairs, so that hopefully people that play on this world can at least walk around a little bit and try to experience a bit of how chaotic it would be to actually live here and move around. In the actual city, it was said that most buildings were connected horizontally through ad hoc links or homemade bridges, and that you could even go from one end of the city to the other without touching the ground. I didn't think I'd be able to pull this off in the build 100% accurately, but I at least wanted to make sure that buildings that touched had a few doorways to connect them. And this was kind of a challenge. I ended up copying out a flat slice of the city to use as a floor plan, which I then punched hundreds of individual doorways into wherever buildings were touching. Then I copied the doorway pieces up so that they would be on every level, then pasted them down into the buildings. Once the stairs and doorways were in place, I tried them out by walking around briefly, and I realized that I could not take 2 or 3 turns without immediately losing track of where I was or how to get back. It was extremely disorienting and made me feel like I was in some sort of 3-dimensional maze. As confusing as this may seem in Minecraft, it's still nowhere near the reality of the actual city. In my build, I have every floor aligning nicely, which makes it easier for me to build, but realistically, the floors were not aligned, and buildings were not always perfectly flush against each other either. Now that the city had some sort of internal circulation logic, I could finally start on the iconic facades. I tackled the facades in 3 main stages. First, I built a set of individual, unique pieces in various widths, which would give me the flexibility to fit all building sizes. Next, I combined those pieces into distinct columns, each with its own character. Finally, I placed those columns across every building face, carefully aligning them with the floor levels to make the city feel cohesive while still capturing that randomness of it. The appearance of this city has been compared to other cities, like the favelas in Rio de Janeiro for its similar chaotic, self-built look, or a couple of cities in Yemen for its similar rigid and compact morphology. But as far as I'm concerned, the walled city stands alone in its visual identity because it blends those 2 extremes in a way that I don't think will ever be replicated. These are serious high-rise buildings, some of them reaching 14 stories tall, yet constructed from the ground up in a vernacular style that's more common in human-scale neighborhoods, like the ones in Rio, for example. The sheer amount of character and personality in just one building is enough to be unique and interesting, but side by side visually with 50 others, all unique as well. To me, this is a major part of why this city has become so iconic. After spending a lot of time, a few building chunks were starting to come together, but I quickly realized how much more there was to do. While there are some incredible images on the internet of the walled city, there are only so many, and I knew that if I was going to give this city a proper recreation, then I had to go deeper and find some more references. A lot of the best images you can find online about the walled city were taken by a photographer named Greg Girard. I looked him up and found his Instagram, and literally on the same day that I checked, he had posted that his book City of Darkness was back in print. And even better, this was an updated version with even more photos, stories, and details than the original. I was stoked and ordered it immediately. With this book, I finally felt like I had what I needed to continue building this city, and so I finished wrapping the outer-facing facades and then moved on to the sides facing the central courtyard. And as it started to take on the character of the real city, I felt more motivated to push through to complete it. I realized that pretty much every face that could see daylight had windows, which is a crucial detail for capturing the the city's liveliness. This created another building challenge that I was able to work through using Axiom, World Edit, and a backup I had made of the world. The walled city had everything a normal city had. Apartments, stores, small restaurants and factories, even some unlicensed clinics and dentists taking advantage of the city's unique legal status. It was like stacking 100 small towns vertically inside a few city blocks. Once the building faces were done, I had to do something about the site, so I traced a map of the area and brought that into Minecraft and smoothed out the topography. I also started to notice more of the newer buildings that surrounded the city and just how big and bland they were compared to the tight and intricate scale of the walled city. That contrast seemed really important to put on display in this build, so I modeled the buildings in the immediate surroundings and quickly finished them in Minecraft just to help add to the ambience of the area. Another thing I discovered was the crucial role that the rooftops played in the city, both functionally and recreationally. The rooftops provided an alternative route through the city above the dark, garbage-filled alleyways below, and offered more sunlight than the cramped streets, making them natural destinations for children to play, neighbors to gather, or anyone seeking a bit of fresh air. It wasn't until I was finishing this build that something hit me. This might be the only city in history built entirely at the human scale. Every inch of it was shaped, placed, or adapted to serve someone's daily life. Today's cities are shaped by restrictions like zoning laws and building codes. Kowloon Walled City had none of that, but the lack of rules did not mean freedom. It meant danger. No fire protection, no sanitation, no real infrastructure. You couldn't even ride a bike through this city. It was unsanitary, unsafe, and impossible to sustain. And yet, that's exactly what makes it so fascinating. People's laundry hung up everywhere that air could reach. The rooftop jungle of wires and antennas, the constellations of fluorescent lights along the city's walls. These were not designs. They were improvisations, and they made the city feel alive and intensely human. What do you see when you look at this city? If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing or sharing it with someone else. And you can download this build on my Patreon if you're interested. Thanks for watching.